Okay, in section 2.7, we're just going to talk a little bit about comments. You've seen comments in the programs so far in this course, but we really haven't talked about them. So we're going to just quickly go over them. So there's two types of comments that we'll be looking at. And comments are text that we put in the program, but they're ignored by the computer. So the compiler ignores them when it's translating this code. So it can be just descriptions to ourselves, of what's going on or what the program does. We can also take certain lines of our code and comment it out so that it won't be used at that time. So there's two types of comments: a single line comment // and that tells the compiler to ignore everything from that spot on in that one line. We often use that like if we have a variable that we have and we want to describe what that variable is, we do after that variable is declared, we'll do // and then describe that variable. So this section of the line is ignored by the compiler that we'll use. The other thing is a block comment. So anything that starts with a /* and ends with a */ is ignored between those two areas. So often in our programs, we'll start with a /* and have a description of the program and end with a */. So if you want to comment out a whole section or have a whole description that you can use, this is what we commonly do. Now later on, we'll see a slight variation of this for auto documentation. Let's see, that's going to be way down in section 3.8. It'll talk about commenting out things for what are called Java documentation. We'll use this special /* and then the */. You'll see this /*. You'll see that at times, and what that tells the compiler to do is that this is a special comment formatted in a certain way, and it'll automatically be put in our documentation and generate documentation for this class. Again, we'll talk about that later when we get down to 3.8. But just so you know that sometimes you'll see that comments rather than // /* there'll be two stars there. And just know that that's marks that comment for inclusion in our automatically generated documentation. One other note is to try to use descriptive comment names. So if you have a variable called number of people, don't just say number of people in the comment. So tell us more about it. Number of people that will be eating. If you have a variable called temperature, just don't say this is the temperature in the comment. So it's a temperature of what? What is it in Fahrenheit or Celsius? So comments are to help future people who are going to be modifying this code come in and understand what you're doing. And this might also be yourself. It's amazing after 12 months when you bring up a program and you have to go in and change it after 12 months, how much you forget about what you did. So sometimes you're just sending comments to your future self to remind yourself what you did in a program. You certainly don't have to comment every line, but look through here. We generally will comment out variables and describe what they are. We'll comment out every method and describe what that method does. But sometimes we'll just comment sections and say, what's this section doing? Now, within BlueJ, let's look at some things we can do as far as comments go. So sometimes we'll be commenting out a section of a program. So maybe this is printing something out here, and we won't, for a while, we don't want it to print out. So I can go in that line and I can actually go in and say comment out that line, and it'll put the // automatically at the beginning of that line. In fact, I can highlight a whole section. I could look at this whole method here, all the code in this method, and comment it out. I can just hit F8 and comment it out. So again, F8 comments it out and uncomments it out. So I can have that all commented out. So sometimes, again, I'll comment out whole sections of my program to try things out. I can highlight that and then uncomment it. Or again, click on that line and hit F7 to uncomment it. So that's built into our compiler. It's somewhat helpful with working with comments. Now, Whitespace are the like spaces and tabs, blank lines, things like that. They're largely ignored by your compiler. You can walk through this little example. It shows you that. So let's again look at how we can use Whitespace. So we generally want to work with tabbing things in a certain way and setting up certain tabs here. If you have your program and you don't, it's just formatted kind of weird. Um, you can have it automatic format fit. Under edit, there's this auto layout, which will go through and automatically re-layout and set in spacing, indents properly. So that's a good thing to do, is just Control Shift I will automatically lay out your program here. Um, the other thing is, if you want to indent a certain section of your code for some reason, you can just highlight it and do this indent more or indent less to indent certain sections of it more or less for it. Um, okay, so the last thing I want you to do in this exercise is go through these little questions, work through these comments on what's valid and what's invalid comments. So, um, Well, they give you examples of code without very much white space here. It's hard to read, and code that's better to read here, so you can see the difference there. There's actually a whole subculture of programming where people purposely write code that's very hard to read and try to write very confusing code that does neat stuff. Obfuscated code. I'll put a link in the Blackboard, so if you want to look at that, you can.